They are playing golf again, and Ron Sirak is back covering it for the Golf Channel and Global Golf Post. You can follow Ron on Twitter at Ron Sirak, Sirak. Ron, hope you are well. How are you?
Well, I was thinking this is the first time I've been home on Father's Day week since 1987.
Wow.
Usually today I'd be wherever the U.S. Open was going to be this week.
Right.
Yep. My first two U.S. Opens, 88 and 89, were both won by Curtis Strange, who's got some ties down Naples way.
Yep.
And strange for me now is that all these years later, he's now a friend of mine. And every year when I'm down there for the LPGA CME Tour Championship, usually have dinner out at Sarah and Curtis's place. But 1987 was the last time I was home this week.
Holy cow, Ron. I was a senior in high school. I just graduated high school when that happened. I mean, that is, and I'm an old man now, so that baffled me right off the bat. One, on that, are you okay with it? I mean, just personally, how weird is this for you not to be covering a U.S. Open? And just personally, are you okay with being home this week?
Well, this is the fewest miles I've traveled since 1986, and it's that is odd, and I do miss. This was supposed to be my 31st Masters this year. Hopefully that'll happen in November. It's been a part of my routine for so long that there is a big void there. There is a big gap there. I don't miss the travel all that much, but boy, I miss being at tournaments. I miss that adrenaline rush of writing on deadline on a Sunday night when the tournament's over. One of my favorite sounds is being in a press room and the last putt sunk and the interviews are done. And you sit there and you can close your eyes and you can just hear dozens of other people typing away on their keyboards. And that's when I hear that sound, that's where I know that I'm on the job and I'm where I'm supposed to be.
Well, and Ron, that is part of what was missing from the weekend in Fort Worth. Was normally there is an adrenaline rush. There is a crowd noise. There's a murmur down the stretch of what was a terrific golf tournament. Great field, about 8 golfers separated by a shot coming down the stretch. From your vantage point, did it feel right? Did it look right? Did it work?
Well, the golf was good, but I do think the crowds were missing. There was a shot, I watched a lot of it on TV, and I was talking to a friend that I had there, and, there was only a dozen people in the media center because they had limits on what was going on in there. But there was a shot Gary Woodland hit. I think it was Friday. He missed the 9th fairway way to the right. And he hit about 180 yards sweeping hook over the trees, over water to about 12 feet. And you miss the reaction from the crowd. It's like, wow, that was an incredible golf shot. And I watched it. I watched the replay on social media about 6 times to really appreciate how good of a shot it was. But you missed that affirmation from the crowd, and you wondered how that impacted some players. I think there are some players who like playing in isolation, but there are definitely other players who feed off the energy of the crowd. You wonder yesterday when Rory McIlroy's round was going south on the front 9, would the crowd have gotten him back into it? Would it have been easier for him to get back re-engaged with playing good golf? That's an adjustment for everybody.
It really is. And what were your expectations of the coverage? And what, after watching, do you think you got any more than you normally do? I mean, they mic'd up a couple of guys. I thought there was a couple of funny instances. I think it was Spieth on Thursday or Friday made a hell of a 5, and he was all over the place and makes like a 14-footer, and Fowler had missed, or I think he made a 10-footer, and Fowler missed a 14-footer for birdie, and they walked off, and you can hear, I think it was Spieth, he said, nice 5, Rick. And I thought that was hysterical, because that's just normal, busting chops on a golf course. But do you think the coverage gave us anything that we normally weren't getting?
I think they were trying. They set up a microphone between number 9 and number 10, and players would sort of talk as they were walking through, and that was showed on delayed tape, and I think that was a good idea. Because one thing that I've learned from times when players are mic'd on the golf course, they don't always say interesting things. They can be boring. They can be annoying. I mean, geez, there are times when I've wanted to shout out to Jordan Spieth and his caddy, Michael Greller, just shut up and get on with the game, and quit talking so much. So I do think that it's going to be a tough sell to get the players on board, all the players on board, to want to talk. Some of them would love it. Phil Mickelson would love it. He likes being out there. I don't think Tiger Woods would love it. But they are going to have to, players are going to have to make concessions that way and be a little bit more cooperative, like do the talking they were doing while they were on the golf course. That never happens at a PGA Tour event where players are going to be willing to be interviewed while the round's going on. But in this time, they're going to have to give added value to the TV network because TV is going to have fewer bells and whistles at their disposal. They're going to have fewer reporters on the ground there. They're going to have fewer interactions with players after the round's over. But I thought, by and large, the players were almost to a man quite cooperative with the coverage plans.
I think they were thrilled to be back. So I think for the first few weeks that they will cooperate. He's Ron Sirak. He's kind enough to join us here on Miller and Moulton. Follow Ron on Twitter at Ron Sirak, Sirak. Well, you mentioned Spieth, and let's be honest. He's an interesting guy because he was at the top of the golf mountain, and now he's kind of fallen. And we saw everything that Jordan has to offer, good, bad, and ugly, over the course of this tournament. He had it going. I mean, on Saturday, Ron, he's got a one-shot lead, and he's got 81 yards into a par 4. 81 yards. He makes bogey, misses a 5-footer for birdie on the next hole, and basically Jordan Spieth, for all intents and purposes, doesn't contend on Sunday. He was kind of just at arm's length for most of Sunday. I mean, it's funny for a guy who was such a great closer from 2015 through 2017. He's got a weekend problem now, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does, and it's been going on for a while, and a big part of that problem has strangely been what used to be the strongest club in his bag, the putter. He still makes more 25-foot putts than almost anybody out there, but boy, he misses more than his fair share of 5-foot putts. There are very few golfers that sometimes good things can happen too soon to players, and that could certainly have been the case with Jordan Spieth. People were tripping. And remember, when he came along, it was during one of Tiger's lulls, and everybody was looking for the next Tiger Woods. And he became anointed with that. And man, that burden has backfired on Jordan Spieth. It's backfired on Rory McIlroy. It backfired on Justin Thomas. Maybe it's going to backfire on Brooks Koepka. But Tiger Woods is the only person who achieved a lot at a young age, and it didn't bring him down. He fed off of it, and he got better and he got better. What I worry about with Jordan Spieth is that when the putter's the strongest club in your bag, and when the putter goes south, I've seen that happen to other players, and they rarely get it back. I think of Johnny Miller. I think of Nick Faldo. I think of Tom Watson. Who were really, really good putters. And then when they lost that putting stroke, they never really got it back. They struggled with it for the rest of their careers.
Well, it was an interesting tournament that with no crowd. On that note, there were a lot of short putts missed, towards the end. Schauffele missed a couple. I mean, guys were missing putts. And with no crowd, that kind of surprised me more. Did it surprise you at all that guys were, I don't know if tentative or, a little bit of yips, a little bit of nervousness, whatever it was. But were you surprised at the number of shorties that were missed yesterday?
The only answer that I could think of that is that they're used to playing that golf course in May, and maybe just that sort of month difference in might create different weather situations, and those greens may have been getting a little bumpier, a little harder to read coming down the stretch. But it certainly was true. I mean, we saw Morikawa miss it was a 3-footer that cost him the tournament right there. There were a lot of missed short putts coming down the stretch. Maybe it could be the fact that they'd been away from competition for 90 days. But it could also have been, it could be conditions of the golf course too, that, there's a reason that we haven't had a U.S. Open in Texas in a very, very, very long time. I think that they played the 1941 U.S. Open at Colonial. It's because of how hot and humid it is down there and how hard it is to keep the golf course in U.S. Open quality playing condition.
And for the first 3 days, though, conditions were relatively mild. The wind did blow a little bit yesterday, the normal 15-mile-an-hour wind with occasional gusts, and it's why the course, for the most part, played a little harder. Speaking of Morikawa, I heard somebody over the weekend say he's the best iron player since Tiger. That's pretty heady praise right there, but I will say he did seem to fire it at the stick all weekend. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Well, there's look. I'm in this camp that the only person who can probably be compared to Tiger in any sort of way are people who came well before him. Jack Nicklaus, Ben Hogan, and not anybody afterwards. But Morikawa's iron play is impressive, and so's his composure out there. For a young guy, he really plays very, very consistent golf. And when you hit irons as well as he does, it's going to keep you in every hole. And, there's a reason that he makes every cut out there now, and which is he does not play his way out of golf tournaments. And I think what happened to him yesterday, I thought he was going to win the tournament. And I think what happened to him was just a blip. I think it's something that he's going to build on and learn from. And we're going to see him in the winner's circle in the not too distant future.
Ron, that was a hell of a leaderboard yesterday. I mean, yeah. For those that, and David mentioned Tiger, and I loved your statement that the guys that you compared to Tiger all played before him. But you're right. When Spieth had that run, we were all looking for the next Tiger. I'm of the opinion it's going to be really tough, and hopefully we get another great player in the next 20, 30 years. But this tour's set up. I mean, that leaderboard yesterday, when it came on at, whether you started at noon on the Golf Channel or 3 on CBS, when that leaderboard came on, you just kind of looked and went, damn, they're all playing. I mean, I think golf's in a great spot right now with the light being shined on the sport for a month before anybody really does anything other than a couple of horse races and a couple of car races. This sport's primed, and it looks as if the players are all gung-ho about playing events. And fortunately, most of the big boys played pretty damn well.
Golf reminds me a lot right now of the situation that it was in when I first started covering major championships, when I was at that 1988 U.S. Open at the Country Club in Brookline, that won by Curtis Strange. We were between Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods. We were between transformative players, players who were just generational players. And what we had was a lot of really incredibly talented players out there. Curtis Strange and Nick Price and Greg Norman and Nick Faldo and Ernie Els was coming along, and just all this real depth of talent without the one breakout player. And at that time, I remember in '86 when Nicklaus won the Masters at the age of 46, people were saying, never going to be another Jack Nicklaus. There's too much parity out there right now, too much talent. No one's ever going to dominate the way Nicklaus did. And 10 years later, we had Tiger Woods. So greatness always comes along. That player, that transformative player, may not be there on the radar screen right now, probably isn't. But what we have is 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 players who are all worthy of being considered the best in the world right now. And that's going to make for a lot of really, really exciting competition in the coming weeks and maybe in the next few years.
Ron, what do you make of DeChambeau? I mean, it reminds me, quite frankly, of the baseball player in the late 80s who, during an offseason, I mean, I remember Lenny Dykstra showing up at spring training 25 pounds heavier. And, he said, oh, I was working out. And, we all know now that that was not the case. DeChambeau claims he worked out 3 times a day for 3 months. He put on 30 plus pounds. He looks like an entirely different person. It's amazing it didn't mess up his swing at all, because we see it a lot of times when guys gain weight or lose weight. They don't swing it quite the same. He darn near was in the playoff. But what's your take on DeChambeau?
Early on, when he first came on the scene, I was a cynic about him. I thought, this guy's overthinking things. This is not going to work. He's not going to be successful out here. And then he was successful out there. He won golf tournaments and he was in contention a lot. And I thought, all right, well, what he's doing may not work for everybody, but it may work for him. Now I'm worried that I might be back to my original assessment, and maybe he does overthink things too much, and maybe putting on all this weight, all this muscle, it was a road he did not need to go down. There are guys out there who weigh 165 pounds who hit the golf ball 330 yards. Muscle is not always the answer when it comes to golf, and he may prove me wrong. Again, he may turn out to get to where bulking up the way that he did is going to be a good thing for him, but he's going to have to prove that to me. As I said, I felt from the beginning his tragic flaw might be that he overthinks things, and he's got to show me that's not the case.
Ron, always appreciate your time and your insight. When you do start traveling again, safe travels.
I look forward to talking to you anytime, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Ron Sirak, who's a contributor to the Golf Channel. You can follow Ron on Twitter at Ron Sirak, Sirak. Ron Sirak, kind enough to join us. And like he said, Mark, at the beginning, this would be U.S. Open week. And in 3 months, they're still scheduled to do this Winged Foot thing. Don't know if there's going to be a whole lot of people there, but the U.S. Open is going to happen at Winged Foot. At least that's what we're led to believe.